Ciao a tutti. Come va? Tired? Okay, when I first arrived in Australia back in 2007, I was still planning my first novel. I'd already published a couple of short stories, I was writing poems, but I seemed stuck on the novel. Probably when you love words as much as I do, it's always difficult to get the first novel right. You want the perfect book. Once in Australia, the novel dilemma became less important because I didn't have any time to write whatsoever. I was here with a working holiday visa. A working holiday, take away the holiday part. So in order to survive, I did several different jobs, often during the same day. My degree in clinical psychology wasn't recognized in Australia, so this is a very common problem for newly arrived. So I had to start from scratch. I worked as a waiter, dishwasher, packer, door-to-door salesman, and even as a mango picker in a farm up in North Queensland. This gave me the opportunity to live different experiences, to travel, and to meet a lot of young people in my same situation. One day I was talking about my Australian life to a friend in Italy, and he said, you know what, everybody here wants to come to Australia, but we know zero about the place and the life you're doing there. So the novel dilemma was solved. Latinoaustraliana was born after that, and became the first novel to talk about the so-called working holiday generation. That is to say, all those young people that have been living in Italy in the last few years, during or after the global financial crisis, and trying to build a new future in Australia. To write a book was very natural and easy for me. I always thought that you should write mainly about what you know better. Writing is much more effective and convincing if you know what you are talking about. With Latinoaustraliana, I just had to put on paper all the stories that I've been collecting during my year in Australia. The most difficult thing was, in my case, the life beyond the novel. I was going from job to job, working long hours, with almost zero time to spare. Therefore, I decided to write in any free time, after work or on the weekends. I believe that this particular situation gave Latinoaustraliana a peculiar vibe. Because I had no time to waste, the book came out in an impulsive, energetic, and hopefully honest way. The words I was putting down on paper had to be the right ones. It would be some problem to write again a book like that in the way I wrote it back then. Because now the writing would be too distant, with a cold mind. Probably more mature, but less spontaneous. That instead is a book about working holiday makers, written from another working holiday maker. To write it in the way probably helped me to be understood by the people I was talking to, and allow my writing to remain fresh and alive. My intention was to tell a story, and Latinoaustraliana tells the story of Mattia Pasca, a young Italian who was just arrived in Sydney. Mattia will work, travel, and meet many people, and eventually will find love. Some define it as a travel book. Some may think Latinoaustraliana is a coming-to-age novel. To me, this is just my long love letter to Australia. Mattia is not a symbol of this new migration. However, I gave him a few recurrent features. When he arrives to Australia, he's got a little of wrong information about the country. He doesn't speak English, he doesn't have any long-term plan. He lives day by day, as many others. Also because the 1 year limit of the working holiday visa often doesn't allow young people to make many projects. Mattia's got an important feature, one that I share with him, curiosity. He finds himself in a new country and decides to explore it, to live in it, without the interferences of memories or comparisons with Italy. He falls deeply in love with Australia, in a genuine way. During the novel, Mattia changes a lot, probably because I was changing a lot while I was writing it. In saying so, I want to clarify that Latinoaustraliana is not an autobiography. I didn't intend to write a book about myself. One, because my mom could see this the video of the conference, so now this is not about me. Two, because I don't think I had a life so interesting that you could get a book out of it. And three, because when a writer falls too in love with his story, he loses any ability to be critical about his work. My goal was to tell a story that, in my opinion, deserved to be told. I felt that it was important to talk about the people I met along the Australian roads, in coffee bars, on farms and warehouses. Thousands of young Italians put aside their degrees or qualifications to serve in restaurants or pick fruit on farms. As young people, we were often criticized in Italy. An Italian minister back then defined us as bamboccioni, or mama boy. Another one, a few years later, said that we were too choosy. The ones that I met weren't bamboccioni at all. They worked hard, head down, hoping one day to get a visa that was getting more and more out of reach for them. It was very natural for me to talk about these people, because I was one of them. I know writing is a powerful tool, and I could try and use it to show to people in Italy what was really happening over here, to show our strengths and weaknesses, while telling the story trade in mind. While traveling, I learned the differences between old and new Italian migrations in Australia. Nowadays, it seems easier for many reasons. You can get here in less than 1 day in an expensive yet affordable flight compared to 30, 40 years ago. And you can stay in touch with family and friends in Italy with the new technology. But sometimes it seems like we have no right to complain, or even to feel homesick and lost every now and then, because we got it too easy compared to the old migrations. Mattia's relationship with Italy is very complicated. At first, he appears to reject everything about Italy. He's proud of his country. He knows that Italy will always be his home, but at the same time, he can't accept that the same country failed him and forced him to leave. He thought, in the past, Italians had to live out of necessity, to avoid poverty. How come we are back to the point after all these years? I had many inspirations for this novel, and you can find several quotes in the book, starting with the title, which was meant to recall Ernesto Che Guevara travel diary, Latinoamericana. And of course I stole Mattia's name from Pirandello's novella, from Mattia Pascal. Mattia's got a very ironic approach to his Australian experience. In that sense, I got some influence from John O'Grady's Australian bestseller, They Are With Mob, sorry Moreno, but I like the book, which is sort of a grandfather of Latinoaustraliana. I like the vibe and the fact that the author didn't take anything too seriously. I had the same idea about writing. To me, it's not something sacred. You need to get your hands dirty when you create, otherwise you are not creating at all, but just repeating someone else's concept in a nicer way. I used a very simple style, with a language I thought would suit more the people I was talking about. Sometimes it can seem a bit harsh or too strong, but that's exactly the tone I was looking for. Again, literature shouldn't be a museum, even if today we are in one. It has to be more like an house, open to everybody. Life as a working holiday is not easy. Casual jobs, low salaries, and search on future. For that, one of my big influences while I was writing was George Orwell's first and less known novel, Down and Out in Paris and London. I also got inspired from the beautiful and sadly forgotten book, All Lucky Country by Rosa Cappiello. In my opinion, one of the best books about Italians in Australia. It helped me in the process of dismantling the idea of Australia as the last El Dorado, where everybody could get rich quickly and with little effort. It was a wrong idea 40 years ago and still is now. It was also a very dangerous bait that made people to risk the little that they had to come to Australia, often ending up with nothing. Similarly to the characters in Steinbeck's masterpiece, The Grapes of Wrath, when they travel to the West looking for the American dream. In this Migration 2.0, there are no longer myths or dreams. This migration is about sons and daughters trying to find their way in a challenging environment. With this book, I wanted to say that these new migrants are not only visa applications or stats for the Department of Immigration, or some fuga del cervello curiosity for Italian newspapers. They deserve to be seen and heard for what they are and for what they can do. They try their best, living, working, falling in love, getting drunk, traveling, and finally looking for their place in this new world. Latinoaustraliana tells the story of this journey, which is also a spiritual journey. And Mattia's journey shows that, after all, maybe there is no salvation. So all we can do is to try and find what gives meaning to our life. Family, friendship, love. Things that we cannot give for granted, either in books or real life. Not even in the weird, funny, bitter world of Latinoaustraliana. Grazie a tutti.